There are some people who will just be like, Greg, you seem smart. I trust you. But until you have that trust, you need to teach people pretty sophisticated marketing analytics for them to trust you and understand and get on board with the old game here. The old metric used to be lead volume. And now your new thing is cost per registration. Why? And then when you explain it to them, it makes total sense, but it is a fundamentally different way of viewing the business. And so I not only had to explain this to a lot of people and get a lot of buy-in in my first 6 months, but I'm still doing it every month as well.
Revenue boosters, tips now in the fast lane. Watch your profits grow. Welcome to the Riff Up Podcast.
Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be joined by Eric Olson. Eric is a marketing expert. He's been a marketing executive with many technology companies from launch to successful acquisition. He was a top marketing role at education nonprofits and 3 enterprise private equity founded organizations in the edtech space. He's currently the senior vice president of marketing at Fusion Academy, where they're building the world's most personalized schools. So Eric, excited for you to be here today.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me, Greg.
Yeah, man. Well, I want to jump right in. I mean, you have decades of experience in marketing. You've really been in the game for a while, know lots of sort of the unique things that have happened in the past and what's happening today. I want to get right into the beginning. For a personalized school, especially in the earlier education, what does that look like? How do you find customers?
So just so people don't understand, because Fusion's model is so interesting, the goal is to build the world's most personalized schools. It's based on the problem that every student learns so differently, and traditional schools teach them all the same. And so what's interesting about Fusion's model and unique is that we have a lot of the socialization and the peer learning and the group exercises as a traditional school. The classroom time itself is one-to-one, one teacher, one student. So our instructors are able to match to a student's pace and learning preference. Students just get to learn better, dive deeper. They don't get left behind like they might in a traditional classroom if they're slower to grasp a concept. So it's a super interesting model. Student achievement scores grew 33% more than their peers nationally this past year. One-to-one is the proven most effective way to learn. It's always been that way. Hasn't changed since Plato and Socrates. So we're really bringing back orthodox education, which is one-to-one at its best.
That's fantastic. I assume that must mean it's relatively pricey. How does that work?
It is, which gets back to this issue of like, how do you find parents? And it's like, well, it's you need to find affluence and you need to find intent. So it is expensive, as are a lot of private schools, but it's similarly priced to kind of the elite end of other private schools, because when you can move so much quicker through the curriculum, you don't need one-on-one instruction for 8 hours every day. When you're in a traditional classroom and the teacher is teaching to 30, and the pace of instruction the progress can be a lot faster in the one-to-one environment. So you can keep it more affordable that way, as well as we have families who take advantage of our group learning to save a little bit more money. They can take some of our asynchronous classes for those motivated students who need a little less one-to-one help. So there are a few ways that we try to make it more affordable. But yes, not trying to deny that it is higher end private education for sure. And so affluence is a really, really important segment to slice.
Totally. So how do you go about finding the right folks? Because there's a broad ocean of families out there with people who are students age. How do you find the right ones in your process as a marketing leader approaching that problem?
Yeah. And I love just how you asked the question, because I think, those of us in the B2B, B2C space is like, this should be for everyone. Every student should be here. It's like, well, if you want to switch schools, you have to be actively dissatisfied with your current school. If you can afford a private school, you probably are for sure in the top 10 or 25% of income bands that is as far as Google and Facebook and Meta will let you cut from a targeting standpoint. And what we learned on our side is if I'm driving my kid, not busing them 5 times a week there and back until they're a junior and senior, might be able to drive themselves, they're probably within 8 to 10 miles of campus as well. And so for our game, when you look at what really, really, really works, it's the things where the family has made their intent known. So paid social is an interesting influencer to us, but if we look last click, where are folks actually coming and converting quickly? These are families who are actively typing in best private school near Palm Beach Gardens, best private school in Manhattan. They are looking for a private school near them. They had not heard of Fusion Academy. They are just actively dissatisfied with their current school and are looking for options. And then we introduced this model to them that they were not looking for. They weren't looking for a one-to-one school. They were looking for the best private school near them. So then it is my responsibility to introduce this category as that best that they were looking for. But without some of those intent, affluence cuts, driving distance, boy, I can spend a lot of money and get a lot of leads and have very few of those folks end up as enrolled families.
Totally. So how do you day to day think about balancing more leads, lower cost per lead versus higher intent, more qualified lead? What is your framework for thinking through that in your day to day?
The framework is really being diligent in making sure that you have full funnel attribution set up across your site. So I've been here about 2 years. They were midway through the process of building that up. I helped them take it to the finish line. And then for the first time, we went, wow, we are spending some money on some stuff that didn't work. And look, all the really good stuff is coming from, these buckets and these zip codes and these campuses. And so, it's no fault on the past, but you do as well as you can do with the data you have. There's no excuse any longer to go, I'm not really sure what's working, but I know in the aggregate, I'm getting this. We can now, there is still some, what were the influences that these channels had on these channels. And then we have some interesting models that can tell us some likelihoods. But in general, what did this dollar get us? We have that down to the UTM campaign, the content, the ad color, the landing page. We know really well what worked and what the ROI is on this group of, these segments in Google from these zip codes. And once I can't find any more of those, my cost per acquisition, I can increase our cost per acquisition by 20%, but we kind of have to do that if we want our campuses to grow beyond that. So we have this stair-step approach to how we think about marketing ROI, and we just weren't able to do that before a year and a half ago.
That's amazing. So what were some of the, unexpected learnings as you cut through that data? What was maybe one or two stories that you uncovered as you connected those dots?
It is one of those things where it's embarrassing to say unexpected because they're so intuitive once you can see the data. Once you see the data, you're like, oh, now I get it. But I think, one-to-one education, there's not a playbook for that model. We're writing it. And so we have marketers on my team who are brilliant thinkers who, just like me, it's like, well, I have a playbook that worked at my last B2B SaaS company. Should we do some of that stuff? It's like, it sounds okay and reasonable. And then when you looked into it, we were doing things like, let's do thought leadership and let's do content and let's do webinars and let's play with SEO. And all of those things have worked really, really well for me at past places. But then when you look at, so Fusion Academy ranks number 1 for ADD schools. So for a kid who gets distracted in the classroom, they do so well in a one-to-one environment. And so I love that we rank number 1 for that. But how many of those families who are searching for resources for their student with ADHD are also in an affluence band that can afford a full-time one-to-one program? Super, super, super low. Right. So we've learned that from an SEO standpoint, ADD was a good one to target a family that's dissatisfied, but didn't also target affluence. And so just like on the paid search side, we get a lot of students when we target a specific learning difference or diagnostic, but it doesn't solve the affluence issue. And so if a family is typing in best private school near San Diego, they have an intent and an expectation of payment. So again, these are all super intuitive things when you can see it, but we had a big webinar campaign and it was like, let's just do broad parent education stuff. and let's just have nutritional webinars because parents are curious about their kids' nutrition, and we can introduce the Fusion brand to them, and we can get hundreds of people to sign up for this nutritional webinar, and we will get zero real leads out of it because they were interested in learning about nutrition. They weren't interested in pulling their kid out of a school that they kind of like and moving to this super weird model that they didn't know existed because we didn't talk about it in the webinar. So our webinar strategy has really shifted to how do I make sure that everything we're doing and everything we're spending money on targets intent and targets affluence. And so our webinars are universally now open houses for us. We are creating content and having webinars about Fusion, about personalized education, about the benefits and the efficacy of one-to-one, because if someone attends for that, they are much more likely to become a lead. And these are things that when you and I say now, it's like, how could we not know that? Until you really, really see the full funnel data and really do some digging, it all makes sense once you see it, but until you see it, it helps click for you.
Totally. It is always a challenge as a marketer playing with the trade-off between lead quantity and lead quality. I'm sure, have you ever, as you're thinking about less leads and higher quality leads, what does that conversation look like with your sales leadership that you're working with? It must be challenging. As you say, we're going to get better leads, but less of them.
It makes intuitive sense to everybody. And yet it is the first early indicator that, oh, Jesus, Eric, what did you do? Something's wrong. We got 1,200 leads last week and now we got 800. What happened? And I have to say, good things, trust me, wait 4 weeks. That is the downside or the challenge of longer sales cycle lead gen services. So, this fall, we're looking to start our biggest, enrollment class ever for the organization. Okay, so when do we start thinking about fall? We started thinking about fall last fall. It was last September and October when families were starting to think, maybe this isn't going to work for my kid and I've got to make a change, but I don't want to pull them out this year. So I'm thinking about next year. And so how will I fully know what my lead gen did last September? Not until the next August. And so there are things when the earliest indicator of Jesus, what's going on is that lead volume every week. And so that's what everyone in the organization sees every week. And so when we started on this approach, it was you go on this big tour and this buy-in tour of getting the CEO on board with it, getting the sales lead on board with it. There's also this challenge of if you cut leads by, 20%, we have a big call center in our organization. And it's like, boy, that really changes what their scope of work looks like. And you just say, well, the good thing is we can decrease call response time by about 20% if we do this too. So I think it's a win-win for these reasons. And so it is you have to have a big chronic conversation. And I still get emails today from people that I've had that conversation with who get it, who also email and say, leads are down, what the hell's going on? And these are smart people. And it's just like sheer just concern. Like, are you sure you're moving the right needle? And I can show them we are, and here's how we're thinking about it. And I show them the data cuts of there's only this many people in these zip codes looking for best private school near me. So that's where I'm maxing out our spend. But in order to get you the growth goals that you need, we also need to spend in here, and here. Here's what cost per acquisition looks like in all these tiers. Here's how I think about lead quality versus lead volume. And it's really just like, there are some people who will just be like, Greg, you seem smart. I trust you. But until you have that trust, you need to teach people pretty sophisticated marketing analytics for them to trust you and understand and get on board with this the old game here. The old metric used to be lead volume. And now your new thing is cost per registration. Why? And then when you explain it to them, it makes total sense, but it is a fundamentally different way of viewing the business. And so I not only had to explain this to a lot of people and get a lot of buy-in in my first 6 months, but I'm still doing it every month as well.
Yeah, it's interesting as you grow your scope as a marketing leader, politics, education, communications ends up becoming a larger and larger part of the role, which is absolutely important. So you need the strategy of understanding higher quality, lower volume, and then also the politics behind how do we actually get people comfortable with that. Talking a lot about, okay, we don't want to SEO target broad or webinars broad, but you do want to get more folks in on these higher quality lead sources, indications of intent, and now it comes into the website or your digital experience. What are you learning there? What are the secrets for success, especially in this more quality versus quantity approach?
What I've learned is how terrible almost every website is. It is wild to me how unserious most organizations are about website optimization. And so, and it's I don't know, it's to no one's fault. I think people just underestimate how magical optimization can be. Because it's like you can't change that much if I just change the image on our header. It can change it drastically. The headline, the positioning headline, how you first tell your story is, I mean, if everyone needs to leave this conversation today and go test 3 things, it is what's the main image people see when they get to your landing page or homepage. It's what's the headline and how do you make the form as visible as possible versus anchoring it down. And so for those of us who have played in CRO work, conversion rate optimization work for 15 years, we just have like, I know the first 25 tests that I want to run when I go work for a new company. And your first 6 tests will probably win and everyone will get so excited. And it's, no, this is terrible. Think about how bad our website is if so many of these tests were winning. It shows how far away we are from optimization. And so I think all of us marketers we spend so much money sending people to terrible websites that aren't great at converting. And some of these sites are getting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Enterprise sites are getting millions of visitors a month. And if your site converted 2%, 5%, 8% better, it is a wild lift in revenue. And for whatever reason, we focus a lot more on what should the meta ad look like than making sure that our landing page is running at peak performance.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to think about not just 6, 8, 10% full funnel improvements. It's interesting to think about what is now economically viable for us as a business when you make 6, 8, 10% improvements in customer acquisition costs. It changes the amount you can invest in growth, how much you can grow. It's really interesting. So let's get into that. So let's say we all are on the same page about the top 6. I'm not sure that we are on the same page about the top 6. But let's say that the top 6 are the top 6, that the obvious ones. What I want to get at is what's 7, 8, and 9 that you would go to from your new learning. Like what's happening with the modern CRO environment or experience or learnings? Like where that next tranche of interesting opportunities for folks to think about that you've learned from CRO?
Can I start with some philosophical?
Yes.
Oh, Jesus, what do I do with this data? There's 2 that I've been chatting with a lot of folks about lately. One is back to your quality versus volume story is cool. You increase conversion by 10%. So your old site got through and converted 10% less people, but maybe they were more serious if they were able to go through the extra friction or were unpersuaded by the old line. They might have been more serious. That is very real. And so you can't just assume you are converting at the exact same rate of intent or seriousness level as everyone else. So that's really real and hard to perfectly quantify. The other one we've been playing with a lot recently as someone with a high price tag on our services is how price transparent do you want to be?
Totally.
And so do I actually want to, we're doing this both on meta ads right now, and we're doing this on those landing pages that the meta ads are going to. We are being slightly more transparent, especially with our online offerings. There is a broad belief because there's so many online education players that are free. And so someone sees an ad for online education and hasn't heard of Fusion and doesn't really know or one-to-one or what that is or what the value of that is. They'll see an ad that talks about online education and assume we're free. And then our call center will be trying to get 1,100 people a week on the phone who have no interest in paying $1, nonetheless, X number of thousands of dollars. And so that question trade-off there is this issue of how price transparent do I want to be? Do I actually want to decrease our conversion on our website in order to make my total lower funnel metrics look better. So that was a slight pivot from your what are the secrets. I just
No,
wanted
but
to tell you the philosophical challenges we're
no, but
talking about right now
I
too.
think that's universally because we sell software, right? Like it's AI enabled, but software. Like we have a same conversation. How much price transparency we put on
Yeah.
every single SaaS or B2B. Everyone has. I mean, we've as a category basically shifted towards you have features and plans without prices, and it just says call us and schedule a
Yeah.
meeting. And I'm
Yeah.
sure there's so many SaaS salespeople and education salespeople who get on the phone with people with no context or anchoring or expectations around price. And it's just a waste of everyone's time. So that's really interesting to think about a very specific example of lower conversion, higher quality, trade-off one for one.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, I think most of us have never seen a scenario when price transparency was bad. It just feels scary to people. It's like if I can get them on the phone, even though they were thinking they were gonna pay zero, I bet I can get them to pay me tens of thousands of dollars. And I just am very skeptical that that's ever happened in the history of humanity.
That's awesome. I think that's maybe not even six. Maybe that's number three.
Yeah, I'll go lower. Well, maybe let me stay top just in case folks haven't thought about this, which is because people will get really excited or they'll hear things about like, button color is really important. And it's like it really is if you're dealing with, hundreds of thousands of visits a month or at least, 1,000 conversions a month. Sure, button color you should play with. Or, hey, what if we mid scroll down the page, I use this word versus this word? It's not going to make a difference. It will only make a difference if you're getting millions of conversions through. Then that little micro stuff means a lot. But as you start running these tests, for most people, you realize like, oh, it's like only like the big swings that really make a huge difference for good or for ill. And so we think about that a lot. We think about what are the big swings. And so the easiest, most intuitive ones are feature photo, feature headline, how visible is the form and how high up it is on the page. How many fields on the form do you need versus if I shrink it by 2, can I increase conversion by 15%? A removal of all other navigation items. We have no other breakthrough, click-through options besides filling out the form. And then wholly different creative. So full page tests where there is the incremental. If I change all these things at once, I won't really know what made the difference. I don't care. You're getting 20% more. Just be happy with it. And so it's really full page tests, different creative, different colors, different brands. Still needs to be kind of parallel in your system, feel like a sister brand. But those can be wildly interesting. As also when you have internal question of like, we need some new brand stuff. And you go all in on, a big project with an agency and you spend 6 months, then you launch the new site. It's like, oh, it converts worse.
And
Oh
always,
God,
every time.
what's our plan B? So your plan B is to not go 6 months before testing. And phase one is let's actually design, the agency pitched us A, B, and C. Let's like throw it on 3 landers and just see instantly in a week which one's performing the best and have an iterative approach both to the brand concepting process as well as the launch. I learned this lesson the hard way, telling you that, this story that I just learned when I was running a higher ed ad agency. We spent 6 months branding a college and it was the coolest effing brand we've ever, it was gorgeous, Greg. It was so exciting. I got everyone excited about it. Everyone was so stoked with the story. We launched it. Performance declined immediately. And I said, I don't know what to do. We went all in on this. And so we quickly learned for next ones to not pitch it as I promise this will perform great, but it's also we are creating a loose brand design for us that we will iterate and optimize for immediately. How do you make sure that the brand has enough flexibility where you can play with different photographic styles and different text and different fonts and different colors where it still feels like your same brand, but we can defer to the data in terms of what version of this brand story and style actually convert the best for us.
That's awesome. That's really great. Very tactically, this is something that I've personally been struggling with. So this is more for me than anyone. So you're set up in a CRM, you have your data flowing around, you want to execute a bunch of different tests. What are the tool set that you're using right now to actually get CRO working in a way that you could get nice landers up, you could get the data flowing, you could get the results full funnel push through? What's that stack look like today?
Well, so many of your listeners are groaning right now because we're all mad that Google Optimize got sunsetted. So
Yeah.
Google Optimize was a killer free tool that did 80% of the good stuff for $0. And like every good thing that Google does, they go, we're not going to support that anymore because we want to create weird AI stuff that answers erroneous questions and tries to get people to eat glue on their pizza instead of making our sites perform really well. And so we shifted from Optimize to Visual Website Optimizer, VWO. It is the CRO tool that I used when I was at Helix Education, our last agency. It's great. It lets you, unlike Google, it lets you decide what is stat sig significant for you. Do you want to be 99, 95, 80?
Cool.
How do you want to test these variants? What do these multivariates look like? Let's attach this to Crazy Egg or Hotjar and be able to see and be able to watch the user experience of people navigating it. So super cool tool. Optimizely is great too. It was historically much more expensive than VWO, and VWO was slightly less intuitive. And since Optimize shut down, they've both been really, really fighting to get all of that juice. So I've heard that Optimizely is about the same price as VWO right now. And it is, in my experience, a little bit more intuitive. So you should definitely test out both. But we are in VWO land here at Fusion.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. It's always good to get the real insights, and because these tools are also hard to navigate and figuring out the right stack. It's such a it's as important as executing the right strategy is finding the right stack of tools. Okay, so finding the right lead, the quality, high converting leads, putting them into a really conversion optimized digital experience. That's awesome. Pushing it through. That is like marketing 101, what we need to be doing in a modern data driven world. I want to get into the good stuff. What's the tricks? Where are the cool new channels? Where are the different things that you're thinking about now to get really strong leads in ways that maybe are not, hey, let's go to Google, let's go to Meta, let's go to where, what kind of things are you doing to get that, elbow grease, pizzazz done?
The new stuff is the old stuff, Greg. I think everything we've talked about today is this concept of there are individuals out there with intent and affluence, and how do I create a specific experience for that one individual, and how do I figure out how to scale this in the aggregate? And I think marketers deeply undervalue partnerships. If someone already owns your target audience, rent theirs. You don't have to build it from scratch. I see all these folks go like, we're going to build this media company from scratch. And over the next 17 years, we're going to build. It's like, you don't have 17 years of runway, bro. Like, you need to win this quarter. You need to win this month. We don't have time for your slow growth in some occasions. And so in those situations, I need to figure out where the high intent parents are. And I think too many marketers just think too digitally. And so they undervalue the relational game. They undervalue just like the traditional sales game of like, how do I play nice with others and try to figure out win-win arrangements for both of us?
Give me like, use like overvalue digital. What's the non-digital thing that you've done to, I want to wrap my head around some of the, like one of these examples. Get me in here.
Sure. Okay. So I've been in education marketing for a while. So I'll go, man, we've had such good ones over. I'll give you my last handful. So when I was in the higher ed world, I would look at my Marketo cadence and I would see like what emails are converting, and I would look at our ads and look at our Google. But what really opened my eyes was when I would look at the local employers near my college with a tuition reimbursement policy and see Motorola sent us over like 120 people last year and they paid for it. This is unreal. What is this? And so we would have amazing folks at our organization, both at Lewis University in Chicago and Helix Education, where I ended up in out in Utah, where this would be people's full-time jobs, which is just employer relationships of, hey, Motorola, I see you sent 120 folks over there this year. They're all getting this kind of like basic business management degree. Help me understand what you're looking for. What does upskilling look like for you? And it would often be this whole, yeah, it's like we hire a bunch of new grads. They don't really know how to do anything yet. And so it takes us 3 years to get anything good out of them, but we don't want to lose them because we want Motorola people for life. And so we're really looking at it as both an upskilling and a retention game for us. So we're like, cool. And you've been picking these 3 programs most. Help me understand that. And they'd say, yeah, because we really are trying to build pathways for these roles that we've found it really hard to find folks for in the market. And they were just utilizing our generic degree programs. And we'd say, if we got like 120 from the same, we'll build a Motorola degree program for you. And it can be as hard or as easy as you want it to be, but it'll be like, what if these 2 business classes were more about these IT models that you're playing with? And what if your international business program was about your Mandarin relationship in China because you do these things in Zhengzhou? And it was just like, how do I take my existing curriculum and customize it so it's 10x more powerful for the employer? And they want to send me 400 students and not just 120. So that was the one that really just broke it for me in terms of a Google's cool, talking to employers is better. Want me to rifle through a few of the K-12 ones too?
I think it's so awesome from a framework perspective too. It's find the things that are working, go deep with an open mind to understand why is it working, what's working for them. And then great partnerships have this element of co-production, right? Where you're customizing the product, the service, the offering a little bit for that, the unique attributes of whatever that demand source is or that partnership model is. And I think it's hard work, but it's so valuable if you can find those nuggets that exist around lead channel, lead source, where things start to be, hey, that's interesting for people coming from Motorola. How do we get in there, build a relationship, understand the need, and actually do the hard work of customizing the offering so that this isn't just a partnership for a lead flow perspective. This is actually a really organic, profound partnership that we're building something specialized together for. That is awesome. I think, I asked the question looking for some easy trick or hack, but I think that the point is they're harder, and that's where you get the real gritty ROI, right? Doing the harder thing is really inspiring to me personally. I'm thinking about where are those more difficult, customized partnerships that I can do. Eric, this is great. I'm dripping and drowning in tactical ideas. Fewer, better leads is just incredible. I'm thinking about that full funnel approach to find the really high intent people that are in my very tight targeted audience. The CRO is amazing, like getting really nitty gritty, testing these things out, thinking about partnerships. This is incredible. Eric, I really appreciate it. One quick thing before I go, I was going to ask where people can find you, but I don't want to ask that. I think if you're not already following Eric on Twitter, x.com, you got to go follow him. He has some amazing content and way less engagement than he deserves for the quality of his content.
That's what I tell my mom too. Thanks, Greg.
But you're sharing so much wisdom, so many nuggets on x.com for a marketer, for a salesperson to come in there and think about growth. And I think that is one of the really underappreciated nuggets out there. So I'm going to tell people my recommendation is go find Eric on x.com. What your handle is?
E. Olsen Creative, EOLSEN Creative.
Awesome. And then other than your X, how should people find you or get in touch, or what should they be looking for?
LinkedIn, Eric Olsen Creative. I've been hedging my bets on LinkedIn because as X is getting a little silly, it seems like a lot of the business conversation is drifting a little bit toward LinkedIn. So I've been playing a lot over there as well.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully we'll have some of these nuggets on LinkedIn as well as X. But Eric, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Greg, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Rev up your ears, it's time to ignite. GTM leaders bringing secrets to light. Revenue boost.